Have you noticed something strange? Some of the hardest working managers are not the ones who are burning out. The managers who burn out are often the most sincere ones, the dependable ones, the manager who everyone trusts, the manager who cares. And that's exactly the problem. Because every good manager slowly becomes the emotional shock absorber of their team. And one day they wake up exhausted without understanding why, as to what is happening with them. Today, I want to talk to you about the reality nobody discusses in the corporate life, why good managers quietly burn out, and why this is very little to do with working hard. So before we continue, if you are new to my channel, my name is Nazia Rafi. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked with managers, leaders, and professionals as a trainer, coach, and leadership facilitator. And over the years, I've noticed something very interesting. The managers who struggle the most are rarely the incapable ones. They usually are the most sincere ones, the one who genuinely want to do the job, a good job basically, which is why this conversation really matters because burnout doesn't always happen because someone is weak. That's something which is very, very, out of the box thinking. Sometimes it happens because someone is carrying too much and it has been for too long. So I want to start with the first topic or the section of this particular content, that is a burnout myth. Okay, so what is the burnout myth? Is most people think burnout happens due to workload. But if workload was the only thing that caused burnout, every busy manager would be burnt out, wouldn't they? Yeah. So some managers handle pressure for enormous pressure for years, while others being they also start feeling exhausted much sooner. So what is the difference, right? So basically, the difference is the answer isn't the workload. The answer is the emotional load that happens that the manager experience. So think about your own last week. How many problems did you personally carry that weren't actually yours to be carried, right? How many conversations stayed in your head even after the meeting had ended? How many worries followed you home? That invisible weight matters more than what people actually realize, right? And that's the reason the answer isn't the workload, the answer is the emotional load that you are experiencing. Okay. So, why is it important, right? What is the food for thought over here? Okay. How many problems did you personally carry this week that weren't yours actually to carry? So think about it, right? Maybe if you want, you can pause the video and you can write it down. But this is something very, very important for you to keep in mind, right? And the other thing which I also want to highlight is the hidden job. No, sorry, the hidden job nobody talks about. Okay, so basically, from my experience being in L&D as well as HR, leading multiple teams, most my experience has shared taught me that many managers think about basically couple of jobs, right? So basically, it can be in terms of middle managers expected to deliver results. Yes, yeah. They manage people. Obviously, that's the reason they are a manager. And they also absorb the emotions, right? They're expected to also, be the cushion to help the team members feel better, like address their concerns, address their frustration, so that the performance and the productivity does not get impacted. So this is typically what the management expects of a manager. But there's also a unsaid impact. So what exactly is the unsaid impact that nobody actually prepares most of the managers for, right? So the unsaid impact are these team frustrations, right? So you're expected to handle the team, so support them, but sometimes the team frustrations can be too much in in detail, and sometimes the frustration also comes which is not their professional work related, it can be personal also. There's leadership pressure, pressure from the management, pressure from the stakeholders, pressures from the client. So, multiple pressures. Organizational uncertainty. This is something which is very huge, where you're expected to be the spokesperson on the management's behalf, especially when things are not going well. You also need to absorb complaints, right? You need to address certain these complaints. Again, why the complaints? Because you are the bridge between the management and the team members. The team members do not have direct connect with the leadership, and the leadership do not have time for a direct connect with the team members. So you become the person who is very, very pivotal to create that communication between these two set of people. That can become really difficult, where you're absorbing the complaints from all different sources, right? You're also absorbing and addressing conflicts between two team members who are not getting along, conflicts between the vendor or the project team with your team, or it can be n number of conflicts, right? There can be disappointments. A team member who was expected to be promoted, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, right, based on the recent appraisal, they do not get what they had expected. It could be a promotion, a hike, it could be anything, right? The fear of the people who are going through the uncertainties, fear of the team members, right? And also the resistance. Change is one thing that is constant, and that is something that you as a manager, you need to facilitate, that your team is able to manage that particular change effectively without impacting their productivity, right? So eventually what happens, you are addressing all this unsaid, right? Nobody tells you that expect this, but you're expected to know. The moment you get the title manager, you're expected to absorb all of this, right? So what happens because of that? So the because of this, the outcome is you become the emotional storage room for everyone else's stress, right? Is that true or true? Yeah. So the problem is that organizations often recognize performance. Yeah. So you achieve your targets, you complete your deliverables within the timeline. These are things which are something that the management automatically recognizes because it's very tangible. But the management or the leadership rarely recognizes emotional labor, and this is something which is unfortunate. Emotional labor is very expensive. Is that a bulb on moment, right? Emotional labor is very expensive, especially when nobody sees it. Yeah. And that's why it's very important for us as managers to figure something out, right? And especially why good managers, right? So no, it's not all managers, especially the good managers, right, are the most vulnerable. Why is that? Simple thing, it's an uncomfortable truth. Bad managers actually don't absorb much, right? That's a fact. They are able to move on. They're able not to take that personally. They're able to create that detachment, right? Emotional detachment, which may have its positive, which may have its negatives, right? But what do good managers do? You listen. As a good manager, you are there to listen to your team members, their concerns. You are there to help them as a good manager, right? You are there, even if it's a personal concern, even if you're not able to help them, you're there to listen to their concerns as a concerned leader. Yeah. As a good manager, you're also there to rescue them, especially from any kind of feedback or something which is going to demotivate and put your team into a corner. You're there to rescue them, right? You stay available. Whenever the team wants you, you stay available to them. And not only to the team, you stay available to your clients, you stay available to your management, you are staying available to your stakeholders. And one of the most important thing that good managers end up doing is they say often yes. Okay. So some of you, as good managers, you may say 100% yes all the time. Some of you are able to do 50-50, or there might be a percentage. But most often, good managers, they always say yes, because they don't want to disappoint people. They do not want to be on the they don't want to say no because they don't want to hurt or impact their relationship, right? You always step in, right? You're always there to support your team, okay? And you're always there to protect your team. Does that sound you? Yeah. So if it is, and this is what you're feeling, even if you're able, you're going through out of these 7 points, right? As a good manager, even if you have 4 or 5 of these, what do you think will happen? The outcome is your strength actually becomes your weakness. Yeah, I'll repeat that again. Over time, your greatest strength becomes your greatest source of exhaustion and your weakness. Okay. The very qualities that make you a trusted manager can slowly drain you from all the energy. Yeah. It's a reality check for all of us. So, this is why burnout conversation missed the point. The issue isn't that the good managers don't care. The issue isn't the good manager does not have the skills. The issue is that many do not know where caring should stop. Where should you actually bring a stop and a pause? That's very important. Okay. And apart from this, that there's one more dimension I want to highlight, and that dimension is it becomes even more difficult for a woman leader or a woman manager. So there is a reality check. Okay. So what is that reality check? For many women leaders, there is another layer, an invisible layer. And it's not about just performance pressure, right? It's not anything to do with productivity or connected to work. It is about the invisible load is perception pressure. So what is this perception pressure, right? So become basically what happens is the perception pressure is more about how should I say this, right? There is a constant mental clutter or mental conversation where a woman leader, manager, will end up saying, how do I have to say that? They need to be more mindful about, will I come across too soft? Will I come across too aggressive or too strong? Will people think I'm emotional if I share this, right? Will people think I'm difficult? Okay. So it's very difficult as a woman leader to actually take it at face value because they have a constant expectation, which is very invisible. And again, no one tells you this. No one prepares you for this, and definitely not a training which has been organized. It will not share with you the realities. The frameworks are there. It will tell you how to do your delegation, how to manage your time. All frameworks are very beautiful. Even I have done these frameworks for a lot of part of my journey as a trainer and a facilitator. What we do not teach our manager, whether it is male manager or women manager, is they are women manager, especially they are working managing work simultaneously. They are managing how they are being interpreted, how they are being judged, and how they are being evaluated, right? And that is emotionally exhausting again, that constant pressure, that constant thought process, right? Whether I'm coming across very strong, soft, am I saying it right? Right? Did I choose the right example? Will my communication lead to mansplaining? So these are constant conversation and clutter that runs in a woman leader's mind. So basically, the reason is simply shared. Leadership already requires a lot of energy, whether you like it or not. When you're dealing with people, it requires a lot of energy. And this constant self monitoring that happens requires even more. Okay. And very few people actually see this hidden cost. And that's the reason the pressure, perception pressure creates emotionally, it becomes very expensive. And especially so, both for male and female, but especially for the women managers. And so that's a reality, right? A reality that nobody actually talks about. So let's talk about, all of us are aware of this reality. Some of you are living this reality. Yeah. And I would love to share, hear from you in the comments as to what is your lived reality at the moment. But what is very important for me is, I want you to be mindful of the first sign that nobody teaches. So let me move my image over here. So what is that particular first sign that nobody notices, right? So basically, many people believe that burnout begins with exhaustion, but research, I don't think so, because with my experience, and research also doesn't agree with that. The burnout begins with emotional withdrawal, right? This emotional withdrawal happens, and this emotional withdrawal can be a person who used to be very vociferous during a meeting. right? Suddenly, because of that exhaustion, they do not want to spend any more energy into having that, discussion further or negotiation further or having a disagreement further. They end up keeping quiet, right? They are just burned out. So it is emotional withdrawal. And you will also see if you look at your own professional and personal life. In professional life, you will see earlier in the same situation, in the same set of audience, you would have been more vociferous. You would have put your point down. You would have, even if the stakeholders did not agree with you, you still ensure that they heard you, right? Whether they agreed with you or not, that is a different story, but did they hear you? The moment you are exhausted, there is that emotional withdrawal happens, the mind changes automatically, right? You end up like, you don't talk, you stop caring the way you used to. Okay. And look at your own personal life also for an example. I have seen, and this has happened with me in the past, where when I was exhausted and I was emotionally withdrawn, when I used to come home, and I used to carry, unfortunately, the truth remained was in the past, I used to carry that frustration, that exhaustion into my personal space. And what used to happen was in my conversation with my family members, I have two boys, and instead of spending quality time with them, it was easier for me to just ignore them or snap at them, right? The reason snap is because it was easier for me to address my exhaustion through that reaction rather than taking ownership of what I was feeling. So whether it's professional or personal, there is no, it's gray area. There is nothing called personal life, there's nothing called professional life. But the moment you are in that exhaustion mode, when you are burnt out, when you're in that withdrawal state, the line between the two worlds blur. It's a lot of grays over there, right? So you stop caring the way you used to for the work that you used to do, the commitment, that ownership. You stop being curious, okay? Because you don't have energy left to be curious, to ask that question. You stop coaching. It's easier just to give instruction rather than to guide and empower someone. You stop challenging because challenging someone's idea requires more energy, which you are already depleted from, right? You stop bringing your best energy because you do not have that positive energy engulfed. You are only having that depletion that is draining you even further. And again, I want to reiterate, good managers don't do this. They stop caring, they stop challenging, they stop being curious, they stop coaching, not because they are lazy. I want to set this record straight. It's not because they are lazy. They are not giving up, right? They are just depleted. So if you are feeling emotional withdrawal, take my word for it. Research proves that there is energy depletion. You do not have anything further to give, right? So I'll give you a simple example before we move ahead, right? So I want you to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Don't breathe out. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, right? And you have to breathe out. Okay? It's too much for you to hold on to, right? So what happens is you care, you take a deep breath. There's fear you're addressing of your team member, frustration, stakeholder, conflict. Breathe, breathe. You're taking that emotion of other people. And what happens in the process, you're using the entire energy to take care of other people. And you're not able to breathe out because you are not creating that balance. Yeah. And this is a ground reality. And and this factor leads to something called the survival mode. I'm sure all of you are aware that, typically we have as human beings as well as animals, there are two sets of things that happens in survival mode. Either we fight aggressively for our survival, or we run away, we fly. So basically, fight or flight response. So we move into this. So if in case right now you are definitely feeling depleted, right? You will be in the survival mode. Yeah. And survival mode changes how you receive and experience leadership. And how you feel your leadership has changed. Similarly, people are able to experience that change in your leadership. Okay. Simple thing, because you cannot inspire people when you're emotionally running on empty, because you have given away all of your energy to other people instead of investing on yourself. So, what is the challenge? The dangerous cycle, right? The dangerous cycle is pressure creates exhaustion. Exhaustion creates reduces clarity. Reduced clarity creates mistakes. Mistakes makes more pressure. Yeah. Does that sound like a bulb on moment for you? Yes. Repeat. What is the vicious cycle? The vicious cycle is pressure creates exhaustion. Exhaustion reduces your clarity. When your clarity reduces, it leads to mistakes. And the more mistakes that you create, it creates more pressure. And obviously, more pressure creates more exhaustion. And unfortunately, the cycle, vicious cycle continues. And that's why most often they have, leaders, most leaders have emotional capacity problem, right? And the longer it goes unnoticed, the longer a leader waits, assuming that the situation will change, maybe the team changes, the management changes, the team, something changes in the environment, nothing will. Okay. And I'll share with you a quick story, right? There was this particular Zen monk, a young man who wanted to be a devout monk, wanted to give his best life to be the best monk that he can be. So he used to try to practice every day, sit and meditate. And unfortunately, every time he used to sit and meditate, the constant noise around the temple used to make him very, very irritated. So the cooking that used to happen, the chopping of the wood, people walking in and out, the everything, small, small activities, daily activities used to irritate him. Okay. And the monk was like, thought to himself that this is not going to help. This particular environment is not going to support my growth. So what the young monk decides to do is he decides to go into a river, and in the river he he goes on a boat, right? He takes a boat all by himself and goes into the middle of the river, right? And he says, now there is no kitchen, there is no one around me, there's no chopping of the wood, there's no nothing, right? Now I can sit and meditate, right? And become the best monk that I can be. And as he sits to meditate, suddenly what happens? His boat hits something, most likely another boat. And immediately he opens his eyes with a lot of frustration, ready to scream at the person who got the boat closer to his. Instead of being very mindful, he is ready to explode. And when he opens his eyes, he sees that another empty boat had just drifted and hit his boat. That instant, there was no one. The boat was empty, it was drifting by itself. That split second, the monk realized that the frustration, the anger, the irritation was not because of the external environment. This was the way he was reacting to the things around him. And that becomes a challenge. If you are emotionally exhausted and you are burnt out, the more you wait to address it, assuming that environment around you, your leadership will change, the managers will change, the team members will change, the client will change, company, you're planning to change the company, nothing works because you're working from external in. The challenge is you are depleted, not people around you, not the situation around you, right? So your leadership will start feeling very heavy. Yeah. And not because, again, to reiterate, not because I want to reiterate that it's not because you are incapable, right? It is because you are carrying invisible pressure for too long. And it's important that you address it. Okay, just like the monk who realized that the frustration, irritation was something that he has to address within internally rather than external environment. Till that time, the cycle continues, right? Which is an unfortunate reality. And that happens to the best of the managers I've seen in the Indian corporate. So, which brings me to this particular question, right? The question every manager should be asking, right? What they are asking is how do I become more productive? And this is what most of the organizations focus on. They focus on helping you understand the tools and techniques for time management. They are helping you understand what would be the best frameworks for delegation. They are helping you understand how to negotiate, how to arrive to a good decision. But how can you be more productive and use any of the framework if you're internally not firm, if you're internally not stable, if you're internally not calm, and if you're not internally energized? So the question that you should be asking as a manager is, what am I carrying that was never mine to carry? Right? That is very important. That question changes everything, just like the monk who was in that boat trying to become more, I would say, more spiritual, empowered. But till he addresses what is wrong within or what is missing within, similarly, till you are able to figure out the energy channel for yourself, right? Till you start focusing more on, stopping to carry other people's challenges, right? Burnout will continue. So this question changes everything. The reason is very simple. Burnout is often less about doing a lot of things, right? It is more about carrying too much. Okay. And I hope this is something which resonated with you, right? It is deep. Okay. So the manager, just to bring the entire conversation into perspective, the manager who burns out rarely is the careless one. I want to repeat that again. The manager who burns out is not the one who is careless one. The manager who's burnt out is usually the dependable one. Yeah. They are the sincere ones. These managers are genuinely they want to make a difference. And that's why burnout deserves more attention, because these people are very important resources. They have the heart in the right place, they have the actions in the right place, the behavior is in the right place, but they are carrying too much, right? You are carrying too much. Okay. Again, just to repeat, these managers are not weak. Okay. They are just carrying that invisible pressure every single day without letting go of it. So remember, every strong person will get tired carrying the same weight. Okay. So if today's conversation resonated with you, right, I would also share the the leadership pressure index below in the as part of the description and in the comments. So it takes only a few minutes. Please ensure that you leverage this particular leadership pressure index. It will help you to understand where exactly you are lying in terms of your pressure, as a leader, as a manager, what is your pressure index right now? It may help you, it will take only few minutes, and it will help you to identify the leadership pressure that often go unnoticed until they actually begin affecting different parts of your life, including your confidence, including your effectiveness and influence. And if you are a manager and you want to stay calm, credible, influential, even while working in an imperfect system, I would love to invite you to my upcoming, Calm Authority Masterclass on 21st of June, right? So share, write, comment in the box saying interested, and I'll share with you the details of the masterclass. So here in this particular masterclass, we will explore why capable managers become overwhelmed in detail, what invisible pressure affects leadership most, and why calm authority is becoming one of the most important leadership capabilities in today's workplace. And I'll also share with you a solution that will help you to overcome. Yeah. So you'll find the details in the description box. Please, access that. And the one last message, remember, people do not become exceptional leaders when they're exhausted. I'll repeat that again. People do not become exceptional leaders when they're exhausted. They become exceptional leaders after they learn how to stop being exhausted. So I will see you. I hope it was a bulb on moment, and I will see you in the next video. See you soon.